everyone, this is Miss Moriarty, and I'm here to discuss with us our bioenergetics video. This is going to be an overview of cell respiration. Make sure as you watch this video, you are taking down notes, and please mark the video as done when complete. So here we go. So here, right, the importance of food. We know food provides living things with the chemical building blocks they need in order to grow as well as reproduce. We know food can serve as a source of raw materials for all the cells within our bodies. And mainly what food's purpose is to provide energy. Now remember, our cells are going to use a specific type of energy, and that's going to be chemical energy in the form of ATP. Now that energy can be stored in that chemical compound. And if you can recall from the very beginning of our unit, we talked about ATP versus ADP. We said ADP is kind of like an energy poor battery, while ATP is going to be an energy rich. If we can remember, thinking back to the ADP-ATP cycle, we know that ADP becomes energized, right, when we add that third phosphate group. And when we add that third phosphate group, it's going to help store energy between that bond. Then when a cell needs that energy for whatever activity, that third phosphate is removed and that energy is released. We now know that ATP helps to power photosynthesis. It can work in protein synthesis, muscle contraction. We know it works in active transport, and it's ATP that's the basic energy source of all living cells. So now we're going to dive into relationship between photosynthesis and cell respiration, which we kind of discussed today in class. So we know energy is going to flow into an ecosystem via sunlight, right? The sun's energy is actually the ultimate source of energy on Earth. And it's going to leave typically as heat. Now, energy on Earth is not necessarily recycled, meaning that it can't just be reused. However, we know that it cannot be destroyed. So energy is going to kind of follow a one pathway through our ecosystem. It comes in as light energy, gets transformed to chemical, and eventually leaves as heat. However, the chemical elements or matter involved will be recycled. And so photosynthesis is going to use that light energy, turn it into chemical energy, and it's going to be stored in carbohydrates and other compounds. We know photosynthesis helps to generate oxygen and glucose. And those two then ingredients or reactants are used by the mitochondria that we find in eukaryotes as a fuel for the process known as cell respiration. So here we've got our chloroplast, right? We know that's where photosynthesis takes place, right? That's where green plants are going to perform photosynthesis, creates that glucose and oxygen. It gets used in our mitochondria that's found in all living things for cell respiration. That cell respiration, we now know, breaks down into simpler substances. And when it does that, it releases energy. That energy is then harnessed and changed from ADP to ATP. However, some of that energy does get lost as heat. So when we change the glucose and oxygen into then ATP energy, our waste products are then going to be CO2 and H2O. But recall from photosynthesis, those are the ingredients or reactants for photosynthesis. And just remember, right, we know that plants tend to carry out photosynthesis, but all living things carry out respiration. So plants actually do both photosynthesis and cell respiration, while animals, bacteria, fungi, protists, all those organisms perform cell respiration. And so if we kind of put it all together, cell respiration is going to be a process that releases energy by breaking down the bonds of glucose and other foods in the presence of oxygen. And it is that process of converting glucose to ATP. And so here's going to be our equation, right? We see our glucose plus oxygen creates those waste products known as CO2 and H2O, and it's going to create approximately 36 to 38 ATP. This number is debated amongst the science community. So typically we range it between 36 to 38. And one last piece for us today. We know that much of the energy stored within the molecules of glucose is going to be released. However, for our cells to use it efficiently, only small amounts get released at once. If it was all released, then it would kind of be lost as well as heat and light. So the energy stored in glucose is actually released kind of bit by bit and changed into then ATP. The energy cannot be released all at once. It would kind of be the equivalent of your gas tank in your car kind of exploding in just one single reaction rather than small controlled combustions that drive your car. All right, guys, make sure that you took notes as you watch this video, and please mark this done on Classroom.